In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27th, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
You got it locked to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Friday, September 23rd. I'm Donal Ware. It's Friday. Excuse me, missed you guys on yesterday. I was a little bit under the weather, but I'm back and ready to rock and roll and get down to this HBCU Football Daily Podcast, and specifically the HBCU National Game of the Week. There's a couple of games we could have looked at. We could have chosen for the National Game of the Week. I mean, you could have looked at the Florida A&M, Alabama A&M game. You could have looked at the Fayetteville State, Virginia Union game as one. I mean, you could have even made an argument for Bethune-Cookman and Grambling because everything is still ahead of Bethune-Cookman. But the game that we're going to look at as the HBCU National Game of the Week is A&T and South Carolina State. Everything's still ahead of both of these teams who are still, this is a non-conference matchup with A&T being in the Big South, South Carolina State in the MEAC. But this is a rivalry game. I mean, this game goes back many, many years in the MEAC. Used to be what was called the Border Classic, and a game that was played in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium, home of the Carolina Panthers. So, I mean, A&T has won the last 6 games in the series. The Aggies are not playing good football, not playing great football right now. I mean, you look at the loss in the last game to Duke, much better second half by A&T, losing in that game. Was it 49-20? Something like that, playing better in the second half, but it just wasn't enough. From an offensive perspective, A&T has not settled on a quarterback. I mean, you have a situation where you, in fact, have potentially 3 quarterbacks for North Carolina A&T. What I would say, however, is the constant for that Aggie offense is Bashaw Tootin, the running back. He's been absolutely tremendous. He had 129 yards rushing against Duke. You go back a couple of weeks ago, he had 127 yards rushing against North Dakota State, the number 1 team in FCS. So he's really gotten it done on the ground. He's been the constant, and he's got well over 300 yards rushing on the season through 3 games. But that's A&T from an offensive perspective. I think you've got a couple of young quarterbacks. Eli Brickhandler took the majority of the snaps last week because Zach Yeager was injured the week before. The question will be, will Zach Yeager come back? Will he be ready to go? Because more than likely he would be the starter. And when you look at Jalen Fowler, who's the incumbent quarterback, he started last year. They need to really settle. I think the Aggies really need to kind of settle on a quarterback. And I think it's really between right now, I would say it's between Brickhandler and Yeager, but we'll ultimately see. Sam Washington definitely has Jalen Fowler in the mix. And one of the things that Fowler brings to the table is a veteran leadership, veteran presence. And so we'll ultimately see how that goes. But Bashaw Tootin has been outstanding. You look at this South Carolina State defense. I mean, this is a South Carolina State defense that is really, really good. You've got 2 ends in Jablonski Green and Patrick Godbolt, right? You've got a linebacker in BJ Davis, who is absolutely phenomenal. okay? And South Carolina State's coming off a bye week as a whole, right? Also going back to the week before that, coming off a victory over Bethune-Cookman, another former MEAC rivalry there when you're talking about those two teams. And then, of course, the first week losing to UCF. But that's a tough game you're playing up, and you're talking about UCF, one of the better programs that's a non-Power 5 program. So that's tough. That's going to be tough for anybody, but give South Carolina State some credit. Defensively, South Carolina State is really, really good. Let's take a look at South Carolina State's offense. I look at the running game. It starts with the running game in Kendrell Flowers. He has been good this year, right? But then you have Corey Fields, who is a guy that can complete some passes, right? He was only 6 of 16 in the victory over Bethune-Cookman, but he's a guy that can complete some passes. He has command of the offense. He runs the offense, and he's also a guy that can get it done with his legs as well. So you have that veteran leadership with him. That's a constant. He has good wide receivers, including Shaquan Davis, one of the best in the country. He's a big body guy. We saw what he did against Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl last year. And then you're looking at that South Carolina State offensive line, which is really, really solid. You compare that to the A&T defense, and the A&T defense has been exploited this year. I mean, it's a tough task going up against North Dakota State. It's a tough task, obviously, going up against Duke. Even the North Carolina Central game, A&T to some degree got exploited, especially over the middle in short passes, dumping it out to the running back. We'll see if that happens with Kendrell Flowers, if he catches the ball out of the backfield. But I'll tell you what, you've got Jacob Roberts, a linebacker, all Big South linebacker coming into the season. You've got an inside linebacker in Tyquan King, who has been really, really good. And then, I'm going to be interested to look at the matchups in terms of South Carolina State's wide receivers. I mentioned Shaq Davis versus A&T's corners. Okay, you look at Karan Prunty, who's had a solid season coming over from Kansas. He was I think it was all Big. He was all Big 12 guy, right out of Kansas. He's had a solid season. Amir McNeil has been a veteran. He's on the other side, but A&T has given up some big plays this year. And one of the things that's been a constant for A&T that hasn't been so much of the case this year has been the running game. In other words, teams have been able to run on A&T. You even go back to last year. The young man escapes me, but the leading rusher for Duke, well, he rushed for 3 touchdowns when A&T and Duke played, but he only rushed for like 20 some yards. So, but teams have run against A&T this year, which has generally not happened. The pass defense from a numbers perspective for A&T have been better. Now, whether it's really been better in terms of on the field play, I would say so. Certainly from a numbers perspective, it's been better. But A&T's got to be able to, from a defensive perspective, they got to be able to put some pressure on Corey Fields. He's had some success. You go back to the game last year that was played in Orangeburg. Kendrell Flowers ran wild on A&T, ran for something like 150 some yards or something like that. So A&T's going to have to try to figure out how to shut down that running game, how to be able to stop Corey Fields and Kendrell Flowers. Again, Corey Fields can use his legs as well. Maybe, I don't know that he's had a lot of success, meaning Fields, in terms of completing a lot of passes against A&T, but he's been able to command the offense, and he's done some really good things. This has been a close. A lot of the games have been close. Even last year's game in 21 was close. Some miscues on the part of South Carolina State, a fake field goal last year, I think, in essence, in my mind, cost South Carolina State the game last year. You go back to 2015, a fake punt, right? South Carolina State had that game in the bag. A&T, the run that A&T went on may not have happened had South Carolina State beaten A&T in 2015. So this is a great rivalry. We'll ultimately see how it plays out. In terms of a prediction, I've got to recuse myself from a prediction for a couple of reasons. I'm going to be calling the game on ESPN Plus, the A&T and South Carolina State game. So I invite you to kind of watch that. So I'm going to recuse myself in terms of a prediction in this game. I mean, what I would say is a win or loss, really, but for either team. I mean, if you're A&T, you don't want to go to 0-4. So you want to win this game, right? But even if A&T loses the game and is 0-4, everything is still ahead of A&T because conference play begins on the following Saturday. Same thing or similar for South Carolina State. Would go to 1-3, still has at least, I think, I think two more non-conference games before MEAC play begins. So you're not losing a whole lot in terms of conference play for either team. That's going to wrap it up for today's HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Enjoy the game where you are this weekend. On the weekend edition of Box to Row, we're going to be talking with Hampton head football coach Robert Prunty, North Carolina Central head football coach Trey Oliver. Both of those teams off to 3-0 starts. North Carolina Central, as a matter of fact, ranked number 25 in the FCS poll as well. And we're going to talk to former Box to Row All-American punter from Arkansas Pine Bluff, Jamie Gillen, who is now the punter for the New York Giants. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can catch up on the podcasts over the weekend on our website at BOXTOROW.com. You can also listen to the podcast at iHeartMedia.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, remember, you can watch the podcasts on the Box to Row YouTube page. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk with you on Monday.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.